Hello, and welcome to Prince George Up Close. I'm your host, Nathan Geide, and I'm joined today by Neil Godbout, our editor-in-chief at the Prince George Citizen. Hello, Neil, and welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, we have a bit of news this week out of the Prince George Citizen. Clearly,
I hate it when we make news.
when you make your own news.
We're supposed to report the news, not make the news.
And for those who are catching up on this a little bit later, this is the week that the press went down momentarily, and unfortunately Thursday's paper was not able to be printed and delivered. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about it?
Sure. For this, I guess the second time in 11 years, our press had a catastrophic breakdown, and we weren't able to get our Thursday edition out. Our press, I guess just by way of history, is 56 years old.
Wow.
It's probably the first big edition it published was the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, really?
That's how the press had just actually been recently installed and was printing at the time. The Kennedy assassination paper for the long time residents, it would have been one of the very first time that the Citizen used color.
Oh, really?
On the front. The headline was in red.
Wow.
And so that was for 1963. That was
a big thing up in the north.
That was a big deal. So we in 2008, the one day that we didn't publish that was actually a circuit board that got fried. And in the case of this week, on late Wednesday night, a bolt in the folder. So the folder is as the presses are rolling and all of the pages converge, the folder is the one that is the device that brings everything together and folds all the pages together.
Of course.
Right, and then the paper comes out. A bolt inside the folder broke.
And I'm assuming it was probably very hard to get at.
As our pressman, our 38-year veteran of our press, Al Wilson, put it, it was in a place that needed four hands and only one could fit. And as I was explaining to my wife when I told her about it, and she said, "Well, it's just a bolt," and I said, "My dear, when we need to fix our press, we don't go to Lordco or Chieftain for parts." It's in the case of 2008 with that circuit board, both the circuit board and the fellow to install it came from South Carolina.
Wow, really?
Yeah, we're dealing with
a specialized machine.
A very specialized machine, and so we tend to need to bring in experts to operate them. Of course, our pressmen, our journeyman press operators, but they can only go so far, right? Mm-hmm. So we do have to bring in experts. Right now, and I guess this might be a little dated in terms of when your show comes out, but we're operating with a fabricated part, but we actually, and so we're having to kind of make some adjustments. The press isn't sort of 100% yet. Our readers won't notice that, but behind the scenes we're having to make some adjustments on how the paper is printed until we actually get the part and get it installed.
I look forward to your guys' rendition of Newsies and having people traipsing around and singing in song. But that's it's a good segue actually, because obviously this year the government has decided to bring out some policies, hopefully to reinforce the print industry in Canada. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what they are doing versus maybe what you guys had hoped they would do? Sure,
and I want to do it in a way that I don't want to
bite the hand that feeds you.
Well, not so much bite the hand that feeds, but I also don't want to. I guess I do that enough already in the pages of the Citizen and in my editorials. Criticizing the Trudeau government, but this was a situation where there's an announcement made, $600 million for local journalism and for print journalism in Canada. But at this point, it's a dollar figure. There's very few details that have been released about how this will be rolled out, what the criteria will be. And of course, as we all know, with life in general and government announcements in particular, the devil is in the details. And so we have no idea of how that will roll out in terms of if you're a paid newspaper, if you're a free newspaper, if you're corporate owned, if you're independent, if you're a family business. We have no idea. Will a big national operation like Post Media get money, or will it be for smaller, corporate media owners like the Citizens owner Glacier Media, which has operations all through Western Canada, but Prince George is actually one of their largest holdings.
Oh, wow.
Right, they're mostly weeklies and bi-weeklies throughout BC and Western Canada.
Of course. And I mean, further to that, we might get to relive at least a different take on that portmanteau. Not necessarily subscription, but subscriptions if necessary.
Yeah, it's one of those things. When the announcement came out, we were again looking for the details, but the recommendation has been made several times, including in a exhaustive report, Shattered Mirror, which looked at the state of the Canadian print industry. And one of the recommendations out of that report was that if the federal government wants to help print journalism in Canada, that one of the ways it could actually make that revenue neutral would be to properly tax Google and Facebook. Right now, if you book a Google or a Facebook ad, you don't pay tax on that ad.
Oh.
Because you're dealing with
a multinational corporation
you're
that's basis is anywhere in the
exactly.
world.
You're not dealing with You're not dealing with a Canadian service provider. Therefore, there's no tax on it. So the thing is that if I'm a business and I'm looking to promote myself, and my local newspaper comes calling and says you should be on our website. And then I kind of look at the opportunity to maybe do some work on Google and Facebook. Besides price, suddenly, right, there's no tax involved either, but if I deal with the Citizen, I have to pay tax. That's one of them. And so one of the suggestions was in the form of either a tax or a surcharge, frankly, on Google and Facebook, that would then be turned around and shuffled back to the print journalism industry to make that support revenue neutral, as opposed to
yet another envelope.
Exactly.
I can imagine that the who's who at the big the big three, at least, were not amenable to that idea.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have no idea, obviously, of the sort of the inner workings in those discussions or whatever, but it seems to make sense.
Yes.
And then the other thing, the discussion of print journalism in Canada is of course all print journalism outlets now, including the Citizen, is the newspaper is a part of our business. If the newspaper was our sole source of revenue, we would have died a long time ago, just like the Kamloops Daily News and the Vernon Daily News and the Guelph Mercury and all of those other papers that have passed. But we have our website. We publish specialty magazines. We do special events like FanCon, and on and on and on. We have other things. Our core identity, our core brand, if you will, remains the Citizen, remains the print edition of the Citizen. But we stopped being a one-trick pony a long time ago.
Diversification, I guess, is the key to.
Yes, and so when people say, well, who reads the newspaper? Newspapers are dead. Well, I can't believe the Citizen is still around. The reason we're still around is that, again, right, we're more than just, as I say, the old gray lady. Although the old gray lady is still pretty special.
Of course, I love the Queen as well. I think that something else that brings it all together when it comes to print media is, and I've mentioned this, of course, in my own column in the Citizen, shameless plug. The issue is, people always want a physical object. They really do. Like, I mean, you can't leave a tablet lying around at a truck stop or at, at a bus stop or wherever, right? If you don't have a physical copy, then how will people, be able to read it if they are stuck in somewhere they need to read something?
And even exactly, and even a younger generation, younger than me certainly in my 50s, but I have teenagers at home, and a picture on a phone is cool. Mm-hmm. A picture on the front page of the newspaper, right? Even teenagers who never pick up the newspaper think that's cool.
Yeah, no, of
And
course.
so right, when they say, oh, well, okay, right, 7,000, 8,000 copies of that went out in the community, and on and on and on. And so, there's something, and even though they may not be regular newspaper consumers in any way or rarely pick up the newspaper, they recognize the permanence of it.
Yes.
That and that even though it's on newsprint and eventually the newsprint goes into the recycling, is that somehow, some way that is permanent because it's the written word.
It's been printed.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that always inspires me when I'm trying to write, is that indeed there is a permanent record of this kept in the archives.
Yeah.
And that's important, that it does stand the test of time. I cannot just delete my tweet ever so subtly, as so many people want to do nowadays. You do actually have to stand by what was printed.
Yeah.
Typos and other caveats, exempted.
The world I live in.
Well, I actually there's a great question as well. Could you tell me why we don't do Oxford commas?
The debate rages within our own newsroom about Oxford commas. So
no, you're not going to make a definitive ruling on that.
I'm not going to make a definitive ruling. In the course of my career, Canadian Press has changed its mind twice on the American versus the Oxford spelling of neighbor.
Mm-hmm. And
O-U-R, right?
Yes.
And, right,
color, I'm sure,
exactly.
as well, etc.
It's O-U-R. No, it's O-R. Oh, it's back to O-U-R. It's currently O-U-R. Right. But like I said, they've changed their mind twice in the course of my career.
I wouldn't want to be in that panel because I'm sure it gets quite heated.
Arguing about small things.
Absolutely. So we've talked a little bit about where print journalism has come from and where it's going. Where is it at right now, in your opinion? Are you satisfied with where you've been able to bring the Citizen? It's definitely taken some changes under your leadership.
It's challenging. I mean that's I can't lie about that. It's been challenging for the Citizen. It's been challenging for the entire industry. I spoke earlier about the diversification of our business. The challenge is not an audience issue. We have, and not just the Citizen, but I would say print journalism in general. We have more audience than ever before. People are interested in the news, whether it's the local news, provincial news, national news, the Pluckus report, the Trump government shutdown that just ended. I mean, everything, right? People are interested in what's going on. The challenge for us is monetizing that audience.
Yes.
It was much easier in a simpler time when we ran 20 pages of classified ads.
20 pages.
Right, but the thing is that of course Kijiji and Facebook and all of that, right? Suddenly that revenue stream is all but gone for us, and so how do we monetize putting news online? Do we put our website and our news behind a paywall, or do we still make it free and try and
use advertising
and sponsorship and other ways of doing that? So the challenge both for the industry and for the Citizen is monetizing our work. Mm-hmm. Really, and giving value to our advertisers that recognize that, and it's a two-part thing, is they still want to support local journalism, but they also recognize that if they do advertise, there is a devoted core of readers that will see those ads and respond to those ads.
Of course.
So really, that's the ongoing challenge for us, is just monetizing that audience. We have over, and people are surprised when I say this, we regularly have over 1 million page views on our website every month.
Wow.
And over 200,000 unique visitors. And
Wow.
right, that's not just Prince George. That's not the region. Is that the Prince George and area snowbirds who are in Arizona and California wintering for, there for the winter. They're either looking at their digital subscription or they're jumping onto our website, sitting
course.
on their tablets poolside in Palm Springs and in Yuma, Arizona.
No, and of course we live in a global,
Absolutely.
a global economy,
Absolutely.
and there are definitely people far away from home that want to know what's going
Yep.
on. A friend of mine was doing an exchange in Quebec for the French language and all of this. He met some people who had tuned into your column and mine as well, who knew what the Citizen was. It was a total surprise to him, of course, at the time.
Right. The one thing that we do get some interesting, and it comes down to even phone calls from from folks in Maryland,
Really?
because there's Prince George County.
Of course. Of course. Yes.
Prince George County is actually in Virginia, but it borders on southern Maryland as well. And so, is that we will get calls from our American cousins either in Prince George County or who are wanting information about Prince George County. And so they're calling the Prince George Citizen on the other side of the continent.
Yes, that
and
makes
in a
sense.
different country.
And maybe that's where that ad for that throne is coming from, because it's been there for a few years now.
It's been there for a few years now. He's dropped the price over time.
Oh.
Now he's taking offers. So
Perfect. So, if our viewers could kind of get a handle on maybe what's a day in the life of an editor walking through the doors of their daily.
I guess this is why I fell in love with this business, is that it's a new day every day. And when I was more a more hands-on editor in terms of every day actively designing pages, writing headlines, now I do that more in a support role when staff are away. But we used to say it's a new toy every day, because it is. We're one of those few businesses that we reinvent our product every day. The only thing different, or the only thing the same, is the masthead at the top of the front page, Prince George Citizen.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that's exciting, but it's also scary, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to reinvent. Okay, what's your product like today?
Yeah. How do I get all this content to fit?
Well, but also choosing the content. What's the right content? What's important to local readers? What's important to local residents?
No fake news allowed.
Yeah, and that's where my job, my management job, comes in. Is guiding my group of reporters and editors in terms of prioritizing. Right, we can't be everywhere. We can't be all things to all people. So what are we going to focus on? Are we going to staff every city council meeting? Are we going to staff every school board meeting? We can't.
No.
And so, right, we have to pick and choose. With a staff photographer, can he be at every event? He can't. So, which things are we going to? And so.
That might get a little bit thankless, I'm sure, if you
does.
miss an event and they're like,
does.
where were you?
It does.
We wanted you.
And sometimes, we're in the communication business, and there's communication breakdowns. Mm-hmm. And I mean, those are unfortunate, but I mean, they do happen. And sometimes, and this is probably the frustrating one, is groups that have special events. And, well, you weren't there. Well, we didn't know about it. You didn't tell us. Yeah, but you're in the news. You're supposed to know. Reading minds is not what we do, right? And so, and then, of course, at the end of the day, and all journalists do this, is there's hubs of news, right? I mean, we know there's news at City Hall, right? Mayor and council make news with their decisions. So, well, what are they up to? And same thing with the police and the courts and so on. So we're always trying to encourage groups that if you're doing something interesting, let us know.
Absolutely, and of course, if they reach out to you, you'll do your best to get down there and make sure that it's all put together.
And sometimes we might say, "Wow, that's great. We'd love to be there. That's a huge story. Maybe that's a front page story." Or we're saying, "Well, that's maybe not as interesting as what's happening at Mayor and Council. We'll get in a little plug for you to promote your event that's coming up, or we'll cover it while it's happening and maybe run a photo or something like that."
Of course. And the other thing, of course, is that I'm sure that every now and again, considering some of the stories that have to be run, I know that there's definitely going to be some phone calls coming in saying, "Why did you have to say it that way?" or "Why did you have to put it that way?"
Absolutely.
Can't you just love the plowing the way it is, Neil?
Well, that's again. I mean, we just try and be as honest and truthful as we can be, but we also realize that, particularly in a municipality and in a place like Prince George, is that if we look at our political process and our municipal government, at the provincial government, at the national government level, we have parties and we have opposition parties.
Yes.
And at the local government level, who speaks in opposition? Who criticizes? Who questions the decisions of local government?
Crackpots, that's who.
The actions of bureaucrats. And so that's where I feel it falls on our reporters, on myself as an editor writing an editorial, on columnists like you to question, and maybe not only to question but to criticize, to say that's the wrong decision and here's why, and of course then letter writers jump in and either agree or disagree or also question what the city is doing.
Yeah, it's a great way to draw fire for sure. Yeah,
it certainly is.
You can get into hot water pretty quick. Just as we come to a close here, what do you hope is going to go forward with the Citizen? I mean, it's made it 100 years, and where do you want to see it 100 years from now?
100 years from now, I don't even want to. I don't even know where it'll be 5 or 10 years from now. I've been in this business now for 30 years, and constant change has been the theme. Not only in the way we do our work, but of course the technology, the demands of the audience, everything has changed. And so I guess where I would want us to be, whether it's in 5, 10, or 100 years, is still pursuing our core mission, which really has to be to do responsible, truthful work that serves the public. At the end of the day, I feel I don't own the Citizen, but I don't own the Citizen, right, in a corporate sense, but as the editor, I feel I'm merely the steward of the Citizen. The Citizen doesn't belong to me, and I don't control it. I feel it belongs to the readers. I feel it belongs to the residents. They're the ones who have supported it. They're the ones who have placed their trust in it. And so I feel I just have to kind of continue to meet that trust, to earn that trust, and hope that the people after me do the same.
And we certainly appreciate all the work that you have done.
Thank you.
And that you continue to do. I thank you so much for coming on. And
thanks for having me.
We hope to have you back again soon.
Great.
Again, this has been Prince George Up Close. I'm your host, Nathan Geide. I've been speaking with Neil Godbout about the Prince George Citizen. Tune in again next time with our next guest. Thank you very much.